The Honourable Member for Thunder Bay, Superior North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I represent Thunder Bay, Superior North and more than 85,000 Northern Ontarians who have seen high rates of unemployment thanks to NAFTA, the recession of 2008, and the collapse of the forest industry. Unfortunately, the Conservatives have consistently limited access to EI, and residents who are struggling to make ends meet are forced to pay the price. Sadly, the Conservative attack on EI is nothing new. They're simply taking a page from the playbook of the Liberal government that came before them. In 2000, the Liberals were the first to limit access to EI. They established a huge surplus for the government's benefit to pad the government's pockets with workers' money and the money of small businesses. Later, the Supreme Court ruled the Liberals had illegally turned the EI funds into a tax grab. I had hoped that the Conservatives might be serious about ending the Liberals' excessive premiums for employers and workers. But in 2010, the Conservatives showed their real colors and followed in the footsteps of the Liberals. The Harper government made it increasingly difficult for EI claimants to access benefits. I meant to say the government of the Prime Minister, I apologize, all while hiking costs to workers and employers. The EI rate was increased 9% between 2008 and 2013. The Conservatives, after 3 successive years of EI premium hikes, have now elevated rates well above what the program actually costs, Mr. Speaker, with no regard for the consequences the average Canadian will face. So when the Minister of Finance first announced a slight rollback in EI premiums for small business owners in September, I was somewhat hopeful. As a small business owner myself, I'm keenly aware of how important small businesses are to our economic growth. Under the Conservatives, big businesses get plenty of subsidies. Meanwhile, small and medium-sized businesses are responsible for the lion's share of job creation and economic activity in Canada. The Parliamentary Budget Officer found just this month that the Conservatives' approach to EI will cost Canadian workers an incredible 9,200 jobs, almost 10,000 jobs through mismanagement. What's more, the small business credit will cost $500,000 and will only generate $800 jobs over the next 2 years. But the government claimed the credit would create 25 times as many jobs as that. Once again, as is frequently true, the Conservatives' claims are at odds with the facts. Even conservative economists are slamming the government's bad plan. Jack Mintz from the University of Calgary says EI premiums should be lowered across the board, which would make sense given the years of unnecessary hikes. The extra EI money could have been used to extend benefits to those who need them. Instead, the Conservatives are slashing benefits. The surplus could have aided an additional 130,000 workers over the next 2 years. Or they could have used it to boost the economy, or healthcare, or education, including job training. Keeping unemployed workers from slipping into poverty makes good economic sense, Mr. Speaker. Each dollar dispensed through EI benefits sparks $1.60 in economic growth. It's incredible to me and logical Canadians that the Conservatives keep reiterating their blarney about, quote, jobs, economic prosperity, and long-term solutions, close quote, when all they ever seem to do is pad their own government pockets with taxpayers' money. When and how will the Conservatives end their legacy of carelessness, Mr. Speaker, and damaging employment insurance policies? Thank you.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I'm happy to see the entire Green Party caucus is here tonight for this late show. I think that's a first. Let me remind the honourable member that our government has a proven track record of success when it comes to supporting our small businesses. On this side, we recognize that small businesses create good jobs and serve as engines of economic growth and prosperity. Let me remind the member that small businesses employ about half of the working men and women in Canada's private sector. They account for 1/3 of our country's GDP. On top of that, small businesses drive our prosperity and give back to the community. We know that small business owners should be spending time growing their businesses and creating jobs. They shouldn't be burdened with red tape and high taxes. So we cut their red tape. We implemented the one-for-one rule For every new regulation imposed by government, a regulation must be removed. By the end of 2013, that rule had reduced the administrative burden by over $20 million. We also cut their taxes. We cut the small business tax rate to 11% and increased the amount of income eligible for this preferential rate. Together, these changes are providing small businesses with an estimated $2.2 billion in tax relief in 2014 alone. Under our government, the amount of income tax paid by a small business with $500,000 of taxable income has declined by over 34%, a tax savings of $28,600 that can be reinvested in the business to fuel growth and create jobs. Let me be clear. Our actions on EI are saving money for employees and employers. Last year, we froze EI premiums for 3 years, which is expected to save employers and employees $660 million in 2014 alone. And we instituted the 7-year break-even rate, starting in 2017, to ensure that any surplus in the EI account will be used for EI expenses. Under this government, Canada is open for business. In 2013, Canada leapt from 6th to 2nd place in Bloomberg's ranking of the most attractive destinations for business. When was the last time that happened, Mr. Speaker? According to KPMG, total business tax costs in Canada are the lowest in the G7, 46% lower than those in the United States. But, Mr. Speaker, we won't be satisfied with this success. We live in uncertain economic times and cannot be complacent. That is why our government introduced the new Small Business Job Credit. This new credit will effectively lower small businesses' employment insurance premiums from the current rate of $1.88 to $1.60 per $100 of insurable earnings in 2015 and 2016. Any firm that pays employer EI premiums equal to or less than $15,000 in those years would be eligible for the rebate. That means 90% of employers making EI contributions in Canada, about 780,000 in total, will directly benefit from this credit. In addition, this credit will require no new paperwork. The Canada Revenue Agency will automatically calculate it on your business return. Overall, our small business job credit will reduce the EI premium rate by nearly 15%. We expect it to save small businesses over $500 million over the next 2 years. It's precisely why our government has introduced the Small Business Job Credit as the latest in our government's effective actions to support small businesses' efforts to create jobs and grow the economy. We refuse to attack job creators with massive tax hikes in the form of increased payroll taxes or increased regulatory burdens. Let me remind the member opposite that this measure has been applauded by groups that actually understand small business. Take the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, who stated that, and I quote, "It's a big, big deal for small business, and it's good news for people looking for jobs," end of quote. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, I can go on, but I see you're about to stand up, so I won't. But I certainly hope the member opposite will recognize the good things that this government has done for small business and support them as well. Thank you.
The honourable member for Thunder Bay, Superior North.
Mr. Speaker, how are we supposed to believe anything the Conservatives say when it comes to EI, really? After years of bad policies, this government has forced workers and small business owners to pay for conservative economic mismanagement, killing jobs left and center, and especially right. This conservative government is inefficient, pure and simple. They hiked EI premiums for 3 consecutive years, then they froze premiums. Now they're trying to roll back their mistakes. But every job they create will cost taxpayers $687,000. That's $250,000 per job. Mr. Speaker, Canada needs a strong EI system to protect workers and generate economic growth. They certainly don't need this job-killing tax on workers and small businesses. Mr. Speaker, EI should be helping those who need it, not boosting the government's own revenues. Will these Conservatives admit to their past poor EI approach and commit to some reforms that actually support Canadian workers and our economy? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable Parliament Secretary to the Minister of Finance.
Mr. Speaker, I don't know what planet my honourable colleague is on, but if he were on this planet, he'd realize that we have among the best employment record, job creation record in the G7. Our government believes that small business owners are taxed enough. Furthermore, we believe that our record on low taxes and support for small business speaks for itself. That is why we have delivered tax reductions totaling more than $60 billion to job-creating businesses from 2008 to 2014. Among these tax relief measures are the reduction of the federal general corporate tax rate to 15% in 2012 from 22% in 2007, and an extension of the temporary accelerated capital cost allowance for manufacturing and processing machinery and equipment through 2015. In addition, as I mentioned earlier, we cut the small business tax rate to 11%. These actions have positioned Canada as an increasingly attractive place to invest and grow a business. If the member wants to talk about jobs, it's our government that has seen almost 1.2 million jobs net created since the recession in 2009. Over 80% of those jobs are full-time, high-paying jobs. Canada has a healthy and competitive business environment. That's why businesses from around the world are coming to Canada to set up their headquarters. In turn, it helps the economy grow, encourages creation of new jobs, and raises our standard of living. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.